The southern half of the UK, temperatures fall away, frost and fog form, and once again some dense fog patches about first thing Thursday. But for northern England, for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, a milder start here because of the cloud and the breeze. And it's going to be remaining damp for the Northwest Highlands, for the Northern and Western Isles at times, generally during the next few days. I think in places the fog will linger into the afternoon across parts of England and Wales. Away from those, plenty of sunshine once more, central, southern and eastern parts of the country, but feeling a bit colder, and those temperatures drop away later this week into the weekend, and we'll increasingly see more widespread and longer lasting fog.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
No spin, no bias, and no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, is it time to draw a line in the sand and say we will not listen anymore to the hysterical models of doomsday scientists who got Omicron so devastatingly wrong? I'll argue that in a very special and important digest before getting the views of my superstar panel tonight, the Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, Daily Star columnist Dawn Neeson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Then at 10:20, I'll sit down with Tory MP Bob Seeley, who has been demanding an emergency debate on how we have let these modelers curtail our freedom so dramatically for so long. Do you remember when the BBC didn't hate Britain and used to end the broadcasting day like this? Andrew Rosenthal MP certainly does. I back his campaign to return the national anthem to the airwaves, and tonight's uncancelled. Has scheming Sturgeon abandoned her promise to hold a new Scottish independence referendum next year? Political firebrand Anne Widdecombe weighs in on that in Big Witty style. And will the Australian establishment recover from the national humiliation of the Novak Djokovic debacle? And will the row change anything in the country? Spiked Online chief political writer Brendan O'Neill explores that in The Outsider. The mainstream media are all fired up, but does anyone actually care about the latest Downing Street party allegations? We'll be getting your verdict as entrepreneur Luke Johnson, broadcaster Nina Mishkov, and Reform UK leader Richard Tice go to war in the clash. Plus, I'll ask my panel if Boris Johnson critics have underestimated his staying power amid the row. For at least one of my trio, it is the final straw for them and the PM. And they'll weigh in on my campaign. This is an important campaign. I'm most heated about it today. To save our sachets. After ketchup fascist George Eustace looks to ban sauce packets, and wait for it, milk containers too, truly. This is the issue of the day for me. It's certainly going to be a wild media buzz coming from 10. Plus, we'll bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages and crown another Greatest Britain and Union jackass. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. I understand how fatigued so many of you are about having to talk constantly and consistently about wine and cheese nights, bring your own booze, bashes and Christmas parties over the past 22 months at number 10 Downing Street. I'm also aware that the vast majority of the mainstream media, yes, I'm looking at you, BBC, ITV News, Sky News, are creeping all over this story relentlessly to damage the Conservative Party and force the resignation of Boris Johnson. But let me tell you the only reason why the story matters to me. We must never, ever, ever again be locked down, allowing the government to control every aspect of our behaviour. It makes me fume that on the day of the latest party at number 10, the then Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden told all of us this.
I just want to remind people of the details of the next phase of our fight against coronavirus. Staying alert for the vast majority of people still means staying at home as much as possible. So people should stay alert by working from home if you can, limiting contact with other people, keeping distance if you go out 2 meters apart where possible, and washing your hands regularly.
God, watching that makes me rage about what we've all been put through these past 2 years. I don't know about you, but I actually seriously regret now following any lockdown rules, full stop. It's interesting, isn't it? Government officials and ministers wanted us to be so scared of the virus. They still want us to be scared of the virus when they never were. And we must let that sink in. So for me, this isn't about getting rid of Boris Johnson. He's not going to resign. It's about ensuring lockdowns and draconian restrictions are never inflicted on the British population again. My digest coming up, I'm going to take on all of the modelers who got it so wrong on Omicron. Then my superstar panel weigh-in, but let's take a little look at them first. The former editor, current columnist at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator, GBNews presenter Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. First now, though, the news with Miranda Schunke.
Thank you, Dan. Let's bring you up to date with the latest news. Government Minister Michael Ellis says Boris Johnson is going nowhere. That's despite allegations he attended a drinks event in the Downing Street Gardens during lockdown where 100 people were invited.
Prime Minister's going nowhere. He seeks to draw me into making a supposition about the result of any inquiry. But the Prime Minister retains the confidence of the people of this country, and he did so 2 years ago with the biggest majority in decades.
Well, the latest police data shows hundreds of fines for breaking COVID laws in England and Wales were handed out in the week of the alleged garden party in May 2020. Two polls from YouGov and Savanta Comres reveal over half of UK adults think the Prime Minister should now resign. Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross says he's furious about the allegations.
Angry, and I think that reflects what people across Scotland and the UK are feeling right now. We've had all day today. It's definitely going to come up at Prime Minister's questions tomorrow if it's not answered before then. So why not come forward right now and tell the public, was he at the party or not?
Well, in other news, a lorry driver who was looking at adult dating sites while at the wheel has been jailed for 8 years after a crash that killed 3 people. Ion Onut was on the A1 motorway in County Durham when his cab ploughed into traffic at 58 miles per hour, bursting into flames. The court was told Onut was utterly oblivious to the vehicles ahead of him. 2 men have been arrested in connection with the disappearance of a schoolboy 15 years ago. Andrew Gosden from Doncaster was 14 when he vanished in September 2007. He was last seen on CCTV at King's Cross Station in London. 2 men aged 38 and 45 were held in the capital on suspicion of kidnap and human trafficking. Both have since been released under investigation. Novak Djokovic is continuing his practice shots in Melbourne ahead of next week's Australian Open as immigration officials consider whether to cancel his visa. Authorities are investigating the world number one after it emerged he may have given misleading travel information on his entry forms. And the Vicar of Dibley star Gary Waldhorn has died at the age of 78.
I'm Geraldine. Believe you're expecting me.
No, I'm expecting our new vicar. Unless, of course, you are the new vicar and they've landed us with a woman. Some sort of insane joke.
Oh, dear.
Oh, my God!
He was best known for playing Councillor David Horton alongside Dawn French in the comedy sitcom, featuring in every episode since it first aired in 1994. His family said he passed away peacefully yesterday morning. Well, this is GB News. More news as it happens. Now back to Dan Wootton tonight.
So how did they get it so devastatingly wrong? You know what I'm talking about, right? The doomsday scientists, the modellers, the Labour Party leaders, the media hysterics like Peston and Pym, the cabinet lockdown lovers Gove and Javed, Sage, Independent Sage, Whitty, Vallance, Van Tam, Harries, Ferguson, the very experts who have got it wrong time and again during the pandemic, always demanding our freedoms be curtailed even further. And they couldn't have misjudged Omicron any worse if they'd tried. If we thought Project Fair over Brexit by the political and media establishment was bad, over Omicron, it went to new extremes. They wanted us to panic. They demanded new draconian restrictions, and they irresponsibly warned that hospitals would be overrun if they didn't get their way. Well, here we are, on January the 11th. The latest 7-day average of deaths is 237.1 compared to 1,072.4 this time last year. Even NHS chiefs reluctantly admit hospitals are not overwhelmed, with Chris Hobson from NHS Providers, which represents hospital bosses, saying he believes the health services front line will hold. So now it's time for the reckoning. We must never let these scaremongers dominate the public debate and force us into liberty-destroying restrictions ever again. So let's look now at just how wrong they got it. Do you remember Chris Whitty saying this?
This is a really serious threat at the moment. How big a threat? There are several things we don't know, but all the things that we do know are bad.
On December the 8th, minutes from SAGE meetings show scientists calling for restrictions similar to lockdown. But for days, Dr. Angela Kutsia, the South African who raised the alarm about the Omicron variant, had been saying quite the opposite.
Do they need to panic? No, please don't panic. Don't tell people you're going to get severe and you're going to go to hospital. You are actually priming them to go to hospital.
But still they went on. SAGE minutes were leaked to the press and the headlines panicking about Omicron kicked into overdrive. Minutes from SAGE read, even if measures are introduced immediately, there may not be time to fully ascertain whether they are sufficient before decisions are needed on further action. Rubbish. But Sajid Javid was listening. On December the 13th, the Health Secretary told Parliament that the UK Health Security Agency estimates there are 200,000 Omicron infections a day, doubling every 2 days.
No variant of COVID-19 has spread this fast. There are now 4,713 confirmed cases of Omicron in the UK. And the UK Health Security Agency estimates that the current number of daily infections are around 200,000.
Within 24 hours, the hysterical Jenny Harries, who has been awarded with a damehood, appears on BBC News to laughably state that Omicron is the biggest threat we have faced since the start of the pandemic.
Probably the most significant threat we've had since the start of the pandemic. And I'm sure, for example, that the numbers that we see on data over the next few days will be quite staggering compared to the rate of growth that we've seen in cases for previous variants.
One day later, on the 16th of December, Professor Neil Ferguson in Imperial College published Report 48. Now, it does not name Britain directly, but instead provides modelling for hypothetical situations for a high-income country with substantial prior transmission and high vaccine access, like the UK. Imperial says its best predictions show daily deaths could peak at around 75 per million in early 2022, translating to as many as 5,000 COVID deaths a day. And Javid, seemingly ignoring the evidence from South Africa, continues on his disinformation mission to tell us all there is no evidence Omicron is less mild than Delta.
This is a really important question. Your advisors on SPI-M say there currently remains no strong evidence that Omicron infections are either more or less severe than Delta infections. Is that your belief too?
There's no strong evidence. I accept that there's uncertainty around the severity.
Up until Christmas, there was a constant drumbeat from SAGE that a 2-week circuit breaker lockdown, including bans on household mixing, was the only way to deal with Omicron. Oh, and by the way, if those restrictions weren't immediately introduced, we could hit 2 million cases by the end of the month. Stephen Riker, Professor of Social Psychology at the University of St Andrews, but crucially, a member of SAGE, went on Times Radio to say all the science suggests that Plan B is not going to be enough. He was wrong. The government's SPI-M group of scientists, which reports to SAGE, also warned that based on their modelling, hospitalisations could peak between 3,000 and 10,000 a day, with deaths at, wait for it, between 600 and 6,000 a day. So then you get London's failed Mayor Sadiq Khan saying it was inevitable there would be more restrictions, with the NHS facing total collapse.
You think we need new restrictions?
I think it's inevitable. I think the key thing, though, is for us to have a cool, calm discussion around Cobra, look at the science, look at the trends. But I think if we don't bring in new restrictions sooner rather than later, you're going to see even more positive cases and potentially public services like the NHS on the verge of collapse, if not collapsing.
Shame on you, Khan. All of this was wrong. All of these scaremongering experts and politicians must be held to account. Now, look, I know Boris Johnson has made many mistakes over the course of this pandemic, but he was unquestionably right to ignore the COVID hysterics throughout December, who must now be wiped from public life before they inflict more damage. To respond now, my superstar panel. The former editor, current columnist at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator, Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist, Rebecca Reid. Dawn Neeson, we just lived through December, and we lived through one of the most revolting scare campaigns in recent memory, Project Fair on Speed. Yeah. We now know that all of these so-called experts got it wrong. Why are these folk not being held to account?
I think there should be criminal charges brought over this. I really do. The government and the experts, in inverted commas, have from day one deliberately terrorised, caused mass anxiety and the tsunami of mental health issues we are now facing over this. They really have done it deliberately, Dan. You know, we've been modelling constantly for the worst case scenario, literally from day one. Now, where was the modelling for all the other collateral damage that this would cause? The cancer, the heart disease, the dementia, the lockdown from, lockdown deaths from abuse. I mean, just one word, Arthur. And there's 10,000 abused children missing off the register at the moment.
Appalling.
Where was the modelling for that? Why did no one think about the collateral damage this behaviour would cause? I really do think that there are criminal actions to be brought over this one.
And Calvin Robinson, I had Angelique Coetzee on the show. She was very open about the fact that we didn't need to panic about Omicron. Yet we were put through all of this again. And Calvin, I think it's really critical that we remember if Labour had their way, if Gove had his way, if Javid had his way, if Vallance had his way, if Whitty had his way, we would be in lockdown now.
Yeah. And I think it's very important, that digest you did, reminding us of all the clips there, because it's easy to forget what the doomsayers were saying. And I think the problem is they modelled to spec. They weren't modelling based on real-world situations. No. They weren't modelling based on evidence. They were modelling to answer a question that was asked very specifically to them. We've seen this in the evidence from the conversation with Sage and The Spectator, and it's very dangerous and very scary. But the question I keep asking is, how were they so wrong? Is it because they lied, or are they just that incompetent? I can't think of any other scenario.
Well, Rebecca Reid, isn't it because they have now become addicted to the concept of lockdown? These experts believe that the only answer to controlling a virus is lockdown, and so they try and find models that prove that the politicians must lock down and that they're being irresponsible if they don't lock down.
I don't think they go looking to prove anything. I think, generally speaking, scientists like science, and generally speaking, their main love and main interest is science. So they don't necessarily think about how's it going to be to miss my child's first birthday party or whatever. They think about what will this number do if this thing happens. I think to suggest that these people deliberately wanted us to be miserable or they wanted to take away our freedoms is very unlikely. I think what they were asked is, what's the worst case scenario, model for that? And what they did was model for the worst case scenario.
This is an interesting point because they have said they were asked by the government for the worst case scenario. So you have to question why the government constantly demanded that worst case scenario.
I think also, who wants to be the scientist who everybody listened to who said, for instance, the people in Wuhan who went, nah, it's not a big deal, just like a cold, ignore it. Who wants to be the scientist?
That wasn't scientists, that was the communist Chinese government ignoring the scientists, and they unleashed this hell on the world.
They also had people, I mean, they had people in white coats saying it'll be fine. They had people who backed up what they wanted to hear, and it wasn't fine at all, and that's why our lives were decimated for a very long time.
No, but nobody was saying that it should be fine. We should have, though, had some positivity and some guidance rather than constantly being beaten.
Well, yeah, because, Calvin, we've seen the danger when politicians do listen to the modellers. Because look at Scheming Sturgeon, look at Mad Dog Drakeford in Wales, who have caused untold damage yet again to the hospitality industries, shutting nightclubs, banning people going on park runs, banning people going to football games. It was completely unnecessary.
Well, if the politicians are only receiving negative data, that's all they're going to work with. And when we're seeing the numbers come out now showing that people in intensive care, the numbers are lower now than they were pre-COVID, I'm asking questions, how is that the case?
But then the only presumably the reason that they're getting a negative answer is that they're asking what's the worst case scenario question.
Exactly.
They're not saying
I know,
what's the best case
scenario.
scenario.
When you're talking about worst case scenario, though, we have to look at realities. So January 2021, we have less than 1% of the population vaccinated. By January 2022, we have over 98% of adults in this country with antibodies. So it's not, to me, about looking at the worst case scenario. It's about looking at the facts.
But when a new variant comes out, who is the scientist who's going to go, we haven't got that much data, but it'll probably be fine. Everyone get on with it. Because who wants their name on that piece of paper?
A bit of honesty would be good. You know, I retweeted today or yesterday, there was a scientist or a doctor that went on another mainstream media show and said, actually, if you have the vaccine, you are 100% safe against hospitalisation and death. It's not they weren't.
I mean, you're not 100% safe from anything. But that was a stupid thing to do too.
Outright lies. The propaganda was off the scale.
And I'm sorry, we've got Whitty, who has been granted a knighthood over the past couple of weeks. And he said everything about this variant was bad. Well, it wasn't, actually.
Well, it was bad. It's an illness. Fundamentally, illnesses are bad.
Everything about this variant is good, Rebecca. Everything about this variant is good.
We don't know that
because
until we find out.
Because it is probably going to get us out of this.
We don't. Neither of us knows. You don't know. I don't know. Point to the wrong
direction.
I do. Neither of us has any idea whether this gives you better whether it makes you more equipped to deal with other variants. We don't know.
You only have to look at the history of viruses.
Fingers crossed, you're right, but we don't know.
This is how we got out of the Spanish flu. It was a more contagious, milder variant that caused that herd immunity, which is now a swear word almost. We can't even talk about herd immunity, can we?
Oh, it doesn't exist, Dawn. It doesn't exist in this
Oh, no, of course not. No,
but
sorry.
This is the thing that's really frustrating is that there is a perception that people like me want it to go wrong because we love lockdown. I hated lockdown. It was miserable.
Well, I'm not saying you, Rebecca, but some of your breed.
The vast majority would breed. We don't want this. Wait, breed, weird word. We don't want it to be bad. But I think just because you're cautious about saying it's fine, we're all fixed, it's over, doesn't mean you're going more lockdowns, more lockdowns.
But Rebecca, you're robust mentally. There are a lot of people in this country that aren't.
And I'm sorry, Rebecca, I just proved that Sage were saying more lockdowns, more lockdowns. Sadiq Khan was saying more lockdowns, more lockdowns. Labour
Sadiq
was
Khan
saying
said more
more
restrictions.
lockdowns,
And I don't
more
like
lockdowns.
Sadiq Khan at all, but he didn't say more lockdowns, he said more restrictions.
Well,
He's a horrid little man, but he didn't say that.
Oh, well, I'm glad we agreed on that,
He's a
Rebecca.
horrid
I think we can all agree on that one.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Calvin Robinson, Dawn News and Do Stand By. My Superstar panel are here all night. But coming up, has Scheming Sturgeon abandoned her promise to hold a new Scottish independence referendum next year? Probably because she knows she's going to lose. Anne Widdecombe investigates as Big Witty Style returns at 9:30. And next, the mainstream media believe it's the end of Boris Johnson. But does anyone actually care about the latest Downing Street Party allegations? Reform UK leader Richard Tice, entrepreneur Luke Johnson, and broadcaster and author Nina Mishkov duke it out. But of course, I want your verdict. That's most important to me. Email me now, dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me at GBNews. We've got a poll running there right now too. I'll reveal what you think straight after the break.
Hello again. Clearing skies across much of England and Wales overnight will lead to frost and fog, especially in the south. Cloudier and breezier in the north, so frost-free here, but some rain in the far north because of these weather fronts, and also tightly packed isobars across much of Scotland will lead to a breezy night on the periphery of this high pressure. But the high is pushing these weather fronts out of the way. Those weather fronts have brought a generally dull and damp day across southern parts of England and Wales through the day, but they clear by midnight, and then clearing skies across a large part of England and Wales. So plummeting temperatures, a widespread frost, and in some places some dense fog patches to begin things on Wednesday morning. Possibility of disruption on the roads first thing because of those fog patches. They won't affect everywhere, but they will be dense where they occur. Further north, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, a bit more cloud in the sky, so frost and fog free first thing here. Thick cloud for the north and northwest of Scotland, some outbreaks of rain and a strong wind, nearing gale force in exposed parts of the far north. Mild here, 10 or 11 Celsius, whilst further south, sunny skies, but temperatures closer to average. Feeling pleasant enough with light winds, however. Then we do it all again on Wednesday night. Clear skies across the southern half of the UK. Temperatures fall away, frost and fog form. And once again, some dense fog patches about first thing Thursday. But for Northern England, for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, a milder start here because of the cloud and the breeze. And it's going to be remaining damp for the Northwest Highlands, for the Northern and Western Isles at times, generally during the next few days. I think in places the fog will linger into the afternoon across parts of England and Wales. Away from those, plenty of sunshine once more, central, southern and eastern parts of the country, but feeling a bit colder, and those temperatures drop away later this week into the weekend, and we'll increasingly see more widespread and longer lasting fog.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Anne Widdecombe and Brendan O'Neill on the way, but time now for The Clash. As I referenced at the start of the show, the mainstream media are in a lather over yet another alleged Downing Street party smelling Boris Johnson's blood in the water. But do voters actually care? I sent the brilliant GBNews reporters Rachel Sweeney and Bradley Harris out in the northeast and the northwest, the sites of several fallen red wall seats. And worryingly for the PM, they couldn't actually find anyone willing to go on camera and defend him.
It's a true statement. If the investigation finds that it was happening, then it's a bit of an outrage. It's a silly thing to do from the government's point of view. People that should be setting an example.
Well, I think it was absolutely disgraceful. I mean, it's just mixed messages from them. And I used to think a lot about Boris Johnson, but I've just lost all faith in them now.
I feel like I would have quite liked to have had a garden party, to be honest, but I didn't.
It was the wrong thing to do. And it was disgusting.
I have family that I wanted to spend Christmas with that I couldn't. I have old relatives that I couldn't see because I was staying inside to protect them, as we should have all been doing.
They're going to do what they want to do anyways, and especially people in power, they do what they want.
So do you care about the latest Downing Street party allegations? Well, you can email me now, dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me at GBNews, and I've got a poll running there that you can vote in right now too. But to help you make up your mind, let me bring in Richard Tice, who is the leader of Reform UK, Luke Johnson, the entrepreneur and former chairman of Pizza Express, and Nina Mishkov, the broadcaster and author. So Richard Tice, let me kick off with you from a political point of view. You're saying Boris Johnson has to go over this?
I am indeed, Dan, yes. I mean, I heard thousands of voters on the doors of the by-elections in Bexley and North Shropshire, and as these revelations came out about parties before Christmas, people's anger grew. Boris turned from being an asset into being a liability, and the North Shropshire by-election was the wrong. It's the hypocrisy, Dan. When people couldn't see their dying loved ones, they couldn't bury people, they couldn't go to funerals. Here was Boris and his colleagues in Number 10, knowingly having a party, having a gathering, having a load of booze, within an hour of one of his cabinet ministers telling all of us we had to abide by the rules, we had to stay locked down, and if we were lucky, we might be good enough and lucky enough to see one person outside. And it's not only is the hypocrisy, it leads to, Dan, a massive loss of trust in the office of the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, the office of government, our institutions. And I think that's really damaging, really dangerous for our country when people lose that level of trust. It's really serious. And I think for the good of the country, the Prime Minister should resign. I don't think he will, but that's what he should do if he had any integrity, any moral fibre or moral fabric within his body, but he hasn't.
Voters believe there's bigger fish to fry, though?
Well, I hope they do. I think these things come and go, and I suspect, as Richard says, that Boris will not resign and that this mood will pass. Clearly, Boris and the Cabinet are hypocrites. Who's surprised at that? The more important things are things like, for example, huge new energy bills that people are facing, and whether we can truly afford the policies of zero carbon, and also ending restrictions and getting our lives back. And I think if, for example, people are angry at the government, want someone to blame for the misery of the last 2 years, then I think we need to attack the politicians on really serious matters. For example, the business of decanting infected elderly people from hospitals into care homes, spreading the disease into care homes without testing them early on, around the same time in the pandemic, that led almost certainly directly to vulnerable people in care homes getting infected and dying. That's a really serious scandal compared to people having a party.
Nina Mishkov, you disagree, though. You're absolutely outraged, and you think folk will turn on Boris as a result of this party, this particular party in the Downing Street garden.
People have turned already. I mean, if you look at the results of these recent polls, the thing is, Luke may think that it's just a party and who cares, but in fact it goes a long way to showing just the sort of man the Prime Minister is and just the sort of government he has, because the government comes from him. The fish rots from the head down. And he has got around himself a government of yes men, incompetence. The whole thing, standards have dropped so far. There should be the standards of honesty, integrity, leadership, accountability. None of these things are embodied in Boris Johnson. And if these parties show people just the depths of the sort of man he is, then that will go a long way to pushing the Conservative Party into getting rid of him, because the British people deserve more than this. On the day of that party, that particular party on May the 20th, apparently there's 7 parties in Downing Street.
12.
Well, exactly. Foreign Office, you count what you like. But on that day, 363 people died. 4,000 people died that week, and they all died, presumably, alone.
Yeah.
That's just 1 week. That is just appalling.
And Richard, I think that's where I have huge sympathy for folk who are incredibly angry, because we all put ourselves through hell over this time. To me, Richard, though, actually, what this shows is that we should never let the government lock us down again. These rules were so ludicrous, were so inhumane, that it was actually impossible for anyone to follow them, given the folk at number 10 Downing Street weren't even doing so.
Indeed, Dan, we learn that essentially the collateral damage from lockdowns is far worse than actually the disease itself. And what these parties and these gatherings consistently showed was the very people setting the rules realised they were ludicrous, and they weren't afraid of it themselves. So they knew they were locking us down, but they knew actually we didn't have anything to fear, and that's why they were quite happy to have these gatherings, whether it was in someone's office or whether it was outside. And as Nina said, it's the lack of integrity, the lack of accountability, the fact that no one says, I got it wrong, I put my hands up, I've stepped over the line. In the good old days, you would have cabinet ministers, if they got something badly wrong, then they would do the honourable thing and they would resign. And you look here, no one ever resigns, do they? It's interesting, isn't it? The only person voluntarily to resign has been a woman, Allegra Stratton, an unelected woman. But, you look at Cummings with Barnard Castle, he didn't resign. You look at Hancock, he tried to hang on until he was forced out. I think that lack of integrity, that lack of moral fibre within government is deeply, deeply damaging. They think they can just ride above all of us like some sort of elite Conservative class. And I think voters will tell them they can't.
Luke, it's interesting, though, isn't it? Because we have spoken a lot over the past 22 months about these nudge campaigns of fear run by the government. And we now have cast iron proof that no one in government was scared of the virus.
Yeah, and I think your point is well made, that the real issue here is whether the restrictions were effective, whether lockdowns, whether closing schools, whether masks, whether plastic screens, whether wiping surfaces, whether any of it made any difference whatsoever.
It does make a difference.
And of course, people are angry, but they failed to look at Sweden, which had very few of these restrictions and has got a lower all-cause mortality last year than virtually any other comparable country in the world.
Higher than all the other Scandinavian countries.
Not last year, no, I'm sorry. All-cause mortality lower than all of those countries.
And Nina, folk like Luke and myself always said we're going to have to look at the pandemic in its totality to actually work out the huge damage that lockdowns wrought in terms of excess deaths at home.
I would argue that the lockdowns, thank God, when we had them originally, prevented far higher death rates, because it makes logical sense.
But we don't know that yet.
Listen, logical sense will tell you that the virus comes to you through the particles in the air, and the more you can keep people away from other people at that point when there are no vaccines, then the better. Otherwise, the death rate would
Nina,
be way higher. You know, you can't get hysterical about lockdowns. Lockdowns are one method that had to be used.
Oh, I can get hysterical about them because they literally make me so angry because no one speaks about the abuse, the suicide, the people dying at home with heart attacks, the people having strokes undiagnosed because they were too scared to go to the hospital. That is lockdown.
Far more people would have died. You cannot say that. I understand about the mental health. I understand about the loneliness. I understand all of that.
But it's not just mental health; it's physical health too.
And physical health, I understand that, and the backlog in the NHS is dreadful. I understand that, but without that tool, it would have been far worse. And
I think time is going to tell.
The thing is, if you can get people to behave...
Luke, you say there's no evidence of that yet.
If you can get people to behave sensibly and responsibly and to take care of their own health and to keep their distance if they feel like it, or to use a mask...
There is no correlation.
That's what Sweden did.
Restrictions.
There are 5 million people who are unvaccinated.
They trusted the people.
Trusting the people. There are 5 million people who are unvaccinated, and there are a lot of other people who are too selfish or too ignorant to take care. The very people who say, you know, we have to get back to normal life, we have to get back to normal, are the people who are preventing us from getting back to normal life because they are the people who are not being vaccinated and not wearing masks.
Where is the evidence that masks help whatsoever?
Blaming the unvaccinated and non-mask wearers for not getting us back to normal, I think, is completely wrong. We should be blaming the modelers and the doomsday scientists for that. But look, Richard, I want to come to you for a final political question, because obviously politics is at play here. We know from interviews with Nigel Farage, who is, of course, the honorary president of your Reform UK party over the weekend, that he senses your party on the rise because of these ongoing sleaze scandals impacting Boris Johnson. So do you really think, Richard, this is the way for Reform UK to rise in the polls? Don't you think ordinary folk care much more about the cost of living crisis, about we're the green levies on electricity bills, rather than whether Boris is partying or not?
And we're the only party that says we need, with energy policies, to be net smart, not net stupid. We're the only party saying that we need to use our own gas. Yes, shale gas that the Conservatives promised us 4 years ago they would use. So we need to cut the cost of energy by using British gas.
This is the issue that you're coming for Boris on personally.
We are coming for Boris. We're coming for Boris on the cost of living, the cost of energy, the fact that the Conservatives, they've outsourced all of our energy. We're sending our money to Putin and Macron when we should be keeping it.
But you're saying, but just to clarify, Richard, tonight you're saying Boris Johnson should resign because he attended a party.
Oh, I'm definitely saying he should resign because of what has happened. He won't. He will go into the mayor elections, I'm quite sure. And I think that after the mayor elections, I suspect the Tory MPs will look at what I think will be disastrous.
Well, maybe it depends how well Reform UK go in those elections, and we will see. That was leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, the entrepreneur, former chairman of Pizza Express, Luke Johnson, and the broadcaster and author Nina Mishkov. Very spirited debate. Thank you so much. So who do you all agree with? Well, Darren says, unfortunately, nothing will be done about it and everyone will forget about it by next week. And Natalie, via Twitter, says, I'm damn sure they weren't the only ones breaking the rules, and it's in the past, so why keep bringing it up now? We have more important things to talk about than this. And Rachel, via email, says Boris has a way out. He needs to go for it. Turn back the boats, ditch the COVID Klingons. The UK has a positive future if the PM gets back in touch with his libertarian instincts. That's music to my ears. And your verdict is in. This one is close. 47% of you say you care about the Downing Street party stories, while 53% of you say you don't. Absolutely fascinating. Coming up. Well, Australia's global humiliation over the Djokovic saga spelled the end for their insane zero-COVID policy. Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill delves into that in The Outsider. But after the break, has the Scottish First Minister rolled back on her independence pledge? And Whittaker takes a look at Sturgeon's shattered promises in big, witty style. That's straight after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Brendan O'Neill on the way, but it's time now for Big Witty Style with Anne Widdecombe. Now, we all know the last thing scheming Sturgeon really wants is an independence referendum. It's just too convenient a distraction from her own abysmal political record. And once the SNP inevitably lose her political capital, will be spent. So it probably isn't surprising that she made this significant and embarrassing retreat from previous assertions there will be a referendum next year.
I intend to do everything that is within my power to enable that referendum to happen before the end of 2023, and we will set out exactly what that means in terms of the date of introduction of legislation when we've taken the detailed decisions around that. But more importantly, well, it's not more importantly because obviously the enabling the referendum is important, but actually what I think is much more exciting as we come out, I hope, of the pandemic, and certainly the acute phase of the pandemic, are the opportunities that come with Scotland being independent.
So, Anne, this was a really significant interview because it was Sturgeon's first big chat of the year. She does it with a Scottish broadcaster. And while it's in nuance, you will note that previously she has said there will definitely be an independence referendum next year. Now she's saying, oh, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure there will be one. That's very different, isn't it? Because it feels to me like she's running scared.
It is different. I mean, let's be reasonable about these things. All any politician can say is, I will do everything in my power to try and bring about such and such a result. No honest politician can ever actually say anything more than that. So, in a way, she's finally facing reality, but I don't think it will have helped her at all given the importance of Hogmanay in Scotland, that people had to leave bonny Scotland and come south in order to celebrate the new year, because we were relaxed and celebrating the new year, and Nicola Sturgeon was being miserable. So when she talks about coming out of COVID restrictions, well, she hasn't done much to help it. So I don't think people will be too enamoured with her at the moment, but the real crucial thing is that she cannot have that referendum unless Westminster agrees, because it is within Westminster's gift. Now, she knows that. And if she simply tries to put on an informal referendum at huge expense, well, it's got no legal basis. So I don't think Nicola Sturgeon really expects to get an independent Scotland, and actually, I think she'd be running scared if she did.
No, you're completely right. I mean, she's got no strategy because, as you say, Westminster isn't going to grant the referendum. Senior Tories have told me that if she tries, they will simply say, we're not taking part in this. So you can have a referendum. No unionists are going to vote. So it's completely not going to have any basis in law. And the issue is, Anne, there's no real way around that apart from a legal challenge, which, again, it's very unlikely to work.
No, I mean, there is no way around it. And I think what's happening is the time is coming nearer by which she was going to have this referendum. She's now being obliged to confront reality. It's all very well to say a few years out, oh, I guarantee this and I will do that. But now she's coming up to facing the reality. The other thing is she doesn't have a clear majority that is sustainable for independence. I think she knows that. And with all the uncertainties that have come about in the economy because of COVID, most people won't want to experiment at this time. I think she is beginning to face up to all of those things. I mean, I ask again, I've asked on your programme before, what are they going to trade in? You know, the Bank of England has said they can't trade in sterling. It said that last time. The European Bank wasn't so keen on letting them trade in euros either, and they'd have to apply to the EU and all the rest of it. What are they going to trade in? I mean, wee drams or something, you know? I mean, come on, Nicola.
I don't. Well, there's no answers to any of these questions, Anne, because, of course, she lives in this delusional fantasy world that the EU are going to allow an independent Scotland membership without adopting the EU. They're quite simply not. So the whole project is a fantasy, and that's why I think she's actually wanted to extend the coronavirus crisis, because the longer coronavirus is seen as a major issue in Scotland, the more that she can blame it for delaying IndyRef 2. Now, the issue is, Anne, she got Omicron terribly wrong, and she has actually committed huge self-harm to large parts of the Scottish economy. Why isn't she being held to account by the mainstream media, Anne?
Oh, I think she will be over time if she tries to sustain a position which she's followed throughout, which is that whatever she does, she mustn't follow what England is doing. You know, she must do something different. Generally, something much tougher, something harsher, something more restrictive. And she believed that that was the political path to take. I think now that is beginning to wear thin. People want to get back to normal. They see south of the border much closer to normality than Scotland is. And I think she's actually damaging herself. But I think she's clever enough to realise that. And to take the necessary steps. But what she cannot do, no matter how clever she is to have a referendum without the say-so of Westminster. And at the moment, I think most people would buy into the argument. Come on, you know, this is not the time to foster instability and doubts about the future. That's why I don't want Boris to resign. I don't want the instability now. We're in a period where we've got to get the economy up and running again. We've got to iron out the Brexit things. We've got to do all that stuff. And this is not the time to start fostering uncertainty and risk. And I think most sensible people know that.
I'm completely with you there, Anne. Completely with you. Best analysis in the business as ever. We'll speak again next week. Anne Widdecombe, thank you so much. Coming up, they got Omicron devastatingly wrong. So why aren't we having a national debate on why we let hysterical scientists take away our freedoms? Tory MP Bob Seeley has been calling for just that, and he'll join me at 10:20. But next, will the establishment down under ever recover from the Djokovic debacle? Brendan O'Neill explores if national humiliation could be the ticket to unlocking Australia. That's straight after the break.
Hello again. Clearing skies across much of England and Wales overnight will lead to frost and fog, especially in the south. Cloudier and breezier in the north, so frost-free here, but some rain in the far north because of these weather fronts, and also tightly packed isobars across much of Scotland will lead to a breezy night on the periphery of this high pressure. But the high is pushing these weather fronts out of the way. Those weather fronts have brought a generally dull and damp day across southern parts of England and Wales through the day, but they clear by midnight, and then clearing skies across a large part of England and Wales, so plummeting temperatures, a widespread frost, and in some places some dense fog patches to begin things on Wednesday morning. Possibility of disruption on the roads first thing because of those fog patches. They won't affect everywhere, but they will be dense where they occur. Further north, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, a bit more cloud in the sky, so frost and fog free first thing here. Thick cloud for the north and northwest of Scotland, some outbreaks of rain and a strong wind, nearing gale force in exposed parts of the far north. Mild here, 10 or 11 Celsius, whilst further south, sunny skies, but temperatures closer to average. Feeling pleasant enough with light winds, however. Then we do it all again on Wednesday night. Clear skies across the southern half of the UK. Temperatures fall away, frost and fog form. And once again, some dense fog patches about first thing Thursday. But for Northern England, for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, a milder start here because of the cloud and the breeze. And it's going to be remaining damp for the Northwest Highlands, for the Northern and Western Isles at times, generally during the next few days. I think in places the fog will linger into the afternoon across parts of England and Wales. Away from those, plenty of sunshine once more, central, southern and eastern parts of the country, but feeling a bit colder, and those temperatures drop away later this week into the weekend, and we'll increasingly see more widespread and longer lasting fog.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Great to have you back with us. Brendan O'Neill is tonight's outsider. And myself and my GB News family of right-minded folk have been railing against Australia's insane COVID policies for months. But now the entire world is wise to the horrors happening down under after the establishment's attempt to humiliate tennis ace Novak Djokovic backfired in spectacular fashion. In his new column for Spiked Online, Brendan notes they made a spectacle of their own dearth of principle and their addiction to COVID authoritarianism. It is Australia itself that now stands exposed before the world as a once great nation that has thoroughly and tragically lost the plot. And Brendan joins me now. Brendan, I actually think the Djokovic scandal could turn out to be a very positive thing because the rest of the world is looking at Australia and just thinking, what happened to a country that used to love freedom, that used to welcome outsiders, and now has become insular, inward-looking and nasty?
Absolutely right. You know, Australia used to be famous, as you say, for being open, open-minded, robust, liberal, all of those wonderful things that people associate with life down under. And they've abandoned all of that during the COVID hysteria. They've turned into a zero COVID nation with some of the longest lockdowns in the world, especially in Melbourne and Victoria, and with some of the most barbaric restrictions that we've seen anywhere on earth. You know, people were prevented from going home. Australians overseas were prevented from going home to Australia. People were prevented from visiting dying mothers, loved ones. It was a really, really stringent regime. And I think it's now being exposed because lots of people are saying, look, Djokovic may not have been vaccinated, but he's had COVID twice. He's obviously not a threat to the Australian people. And we're starting to see just how hysterical Australia became over the past 2 years.
No, you're completely right, Brendan. I mean, I've spent the past 24 hours reading up on some of these specific stories of the cruelty that zero COVID policies forced Australian governments to implement on their own citizens. And I think the one that really struck me, actually, was a young father who was banned by the Queensland state government from travelling 15 minutes from his house, where he was looking after his 4 children, to intensive care in a hospital. It was over the state border between Queensland and New South Wales, but it was literally a few minutes' drive away, where his 4-year-old daughter lay in intensive care, suffering from the worst type of cancer, where she was undergoing chemotherapy. And I just thought, my God, this is why you're treating Djokovic so badly, because you've got so used to treating each other so badly.
That's exactly right. And, you know, some of the stories I've read from Australia over the past 2 years have just been absolutely dreadful. And I do think there will come a moment quite soon when we will look back on lockdown and we will be horrified by how cruel it was and how unnecessary some of these rules were in terms of preventing people from seeing loved ones, from going to funerals, from doing all the normal human things. And I think what's happening in Australia is that Djokovic has been turned into a conduit for people to express their pent-up fury and frustration with the rules that they've been living under. But of course, it's not Djokovic's fault that Australia turned into a zero COVID tyranny. He had nothing to do with it. The people they should be asking questions of are the government, is the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. It is these people who propelled Australia into one of the most severe lockdowns on earth, and which really did wreck people's lives in some circumstances. So people are visiting their fury on the wrong target. The problem here is not Djokovic getting into the country. The problem is that so many other people were prevented from getting in and from living normal lives. That's the question people need to ask. Why did that happen? Who made that happen?
Exactly, and at some point you have to break the cycle too, Brendan, and you just have to accept, yep, there was a lot of cruelty in the past, but we're over that now and we're moving on. And I have to say, Brendan, I have so many great Aussie friends, and I have so many great Aussie correspondents who read my stories and watch the show. And by the way, there are so many freedom-loving Aussies who are so horrified about what's happened to their country and so horrified about what's happened to Djokovic. And just like in this country, the mainstream media is trying to ignore them. And I think I have to be careful not to blame this on the Australian people. It really is the politicians, it's the media, it's the establishment who have propagated these policies, not the people.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I love Australia. I've been to Australia 7 times. I've got so many friends there. I've done lots of work down there. And it's an amazing country. And one of the things that makes it amazing is that people are very questioning. There are lots of people who are un-PC, who don't fall for wokeness, who are even a bit climate change skeptical. There's a very healthy political culture in Australia, a very dissenting culture. D.H. Lawrence wrote about that years and decades ago. He said, no one is in charge in Australia. People think for themselves. And there is still that going on. There are lots of freedom lovers who are disappointed with the lockdown. And you're right, this is not we shouldn't pin the blame for this on the Australian people. It is the Australian elites who let the people down by pushing them into such a severe authoritarian regime.
And let's hope Djokovic wakes them up and they break the cycle. Brendan O'Neill, thank you so much for being here. We'll speak again next week. It's 10 p.m. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Coming up, as new figures show hysterical scientists got the Omicron scariant dead wrong. Is it time we held the likes of Professor Neil Ferguson, who was hell-bent on taking away our civil liberties, to account? Tory MP Bob Seeley, who is demanding an urgent debate on how we let them get away with it for so long, joins me at 10:20. Do you remember those halcyon days when the BBC didn't hate this country and took pride in playing the national anthem? Those were the days. Conservative MP Andrew Rosendahl says bringing back daily renditions of God Save the Queen is the least the British bashing corporation could do. He lays out his campaign, which I fully support, in Uncancelled. In the media buzz, have Boris Johnson's critics underestimated his staying power amid the latest Downing Street party allegations? And is this an appropriate outfit for a wedding? Oh my God, I say absolutely not. But my panel will weigh in on the Kardashian clan's latest antics and more throughout the hour. Plus, remember, first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Have a feeling the media aren't going to be kind to Boris Johnson tomorrow. And we'll crown the next greatest Britain and Union jackass. But before all of that, the news headlines at 10 with Miranda Shunka.
Hello, let's bring you up to date from the GB newsroom. Pressure is mounting on the Prime Minister to quit over allegations he attended a drinks event in the Downing Street Gardens during lockdown, where 100 people were invited. A number of Conservative MPs say he'd have to stand down if he knowingly broke COVID rules. But Government Minister Michael Ellis says Boris Johnson is going nowhere.
The Prime Minister's going nowhere. He seeks to draw me into making a supposition about the result of any inquiry. But the Prime Minister retains the confidence of the people of this country, and he did so 2 years ago with the biggest majority in decades.
Well, the latest police data shows hundreds of fines for breaking COVID laws in England and Wales were handed out in the week of the alleged garden party in May 2020. Two polls from YouGov and Savanta Comres reveal over half of UK adults think the Prime Minister should now resign. Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross says he's furious about the allegations.
Angry, and I think that reflects what people across Scotland and the UK are feeling right now. We've had all day today. It's definitely going to come up at Prime Minister's questions tomorrow if it's not answered before then. So why not come forward right now and tell the public, was he at the party or not?
COVID restrictions in Scotland will be lifted in a phased way from next week, with limits on outdoor events removed on Monday. But some rules will remain in place for the next 2 weeks, including a cap on the number of people at indoor events, table service in restaurants and social distancing in public places. In other news, a lorry driver who was looking at adult dating sites while at the wheel has been jailed for 8 years after a crash that killed 3 people. Ion Onut was on the A1 motorway in County Durham when his cab ploughed into traffic at 58 miles per hour, bursting into flames. The court was told Onut was utterly oblivious to the vehicles ahead of him. Novak Djokovic is continuing his practice shots in Melbourne ahead of next week's Australian Open, as immigration officials consider whether to cancel his visa. Authorities are investigating the world number one after it emerged he may have given misleading travel information on his entry forms. And the Vicar of Dibley star Gary Waldhorn has died at the age of 78.
I'm Geraldine, believe you're expecting me.
No, I'm expecting our new vicar. Unless, of course, you are the new vicar and they've landed us with a woman. Some sort of insane joke.
Oh, dear.
Oh, my God!
Well, he was best known for playing Councillor David Horton alongside Dawn French in the comedy sitcom, featuring in every episode since it first aired in 1994. His family said he passed away peacefully yesterday morning. Well, this is GB News. More news as it happens. Now back to Dan Wootton Tonight.
So you know it's time for tomorrow's News Tonight now on our Media Buzz. And let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages hot off the press. And I have a feeling there's going to be one story dominating today. The Metro leads with contempt for the victims in response to the Partygate backlash. Grieving families have accused Boris Johnson of showing contempt to their loved ones by refusing to admit if he joined the lockdown-busting Bring a Bottle party in the No. 10 Garden in May 2020. A Snap Savanta.com-Res survey today revealed that around 66% now believe the Prime Minister should resign. However, in a poll on this programme earlier, 53% of you said you don't actually care about the row. The FT adds that the Prime Minister is facing what they describe as a potentially terminal showdown over the party row. He's facing pressure to apologise during a crucial PMQs tomorrow. I wonder if Keir Starmer's going to be out of isolation. I hope so. Maybe the leader of opposition, or no opposition as I call him, will finally provide some. My superstar panel back with me now, though. It's the former editor, current columnist of the Daily Star newspaper, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator, GB News presenter, Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist, Rebecca Reid. So, as you can see from the front pages, and we'll bring you more as they come in this hour, the media clearly salivating over this latest Downing Street party. They're not alone, though. Many senior members of Boris Johnson's own party have called for his resignation. In his newsletter today, chief political correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, one of the most tapped-in reporters when it comes to the Tory party, Christopher Hope, quoted one senior Tory MP as saying, "I suspect it's curtains for him, whether on the issue itself or a collapse of confidence in the parliamentary party." But while this latest scandal is being sold as the final nail in the coffin, earlier today, Michael Ellis, the Paymaster General, told MPs that the Prime Minister was not resigning.
The Prime Minister's going nowhere. He seeks to draw me into making a supposition about the result of any inquiry. But the Prime Minister retains the confidence of the people of this country, and he did so 2 years ago with the biggest majority in decades.
And seeing how Boris has managed to deflect controversies relating to previous illicit parties and issues ranging from alleged pandemic cronyism to the refurbishment of his flat, are his critics now underestimating his staying power? Dawn Neeson, I'm going to come to you first because you actually say Boris Johnson is toast now and that he needs to go.
I do. I look, do I care that they held a garden party during the nonsensical rules that governed that first lockdown? No, I don't. That's not what I care about. What I care about is the hypocrisy of them behaving how they did whilst telling us how to live our lives. They stopped people being with dying loved ones. They made women give birth on their own, surrounded by strangers in hazmat suits. Mental health suffered enormously. One word, that little boy, Arthur, he died because of these lockdowns. And they were standing in that bloody garden, excuse my language, but that garden, laughing, drinking, a fully laden buffet table.
So you're angry?
I'm furious. I am genuinely furious.
And you think your readers are furious?
Yes,
Daily Star
I
readers?
think most people in this country are genuinely furious. Look, you know, as I said, do I care about the breaking of the nonsensical rules? They did that. No, I don't. It was the hypocrisy of which they did it.
So if you were still editing the Daily Star today,
Yes.
Dawn, would your newspaper be calling on him to quit?
Yes. He's not going to quit because Boris Johnson isn't resigning kind, is he? Boris only ever does anything for Boris Johnson. But if he doesn't quit, then I think the Tory party are going to take such a beating. And when the general election coming up, obviously a wide under, but we've got local elections in May. And I don't think you're going to get the result of this inquiry until after those elections as well, by the way. I mean, it was in his back garden. I mean, you know, how do you not know when there's a party going on in your own back garden?
Calvin Robinson, don't we have to be very careful what we wish for here? So, look, I was a supporter of Boris Johnson. I think it's absolutely incredible that he delivered Brexit in a way that probably no other leader could have because he needed to do something quite spectacular, really, and essentially reshape the Tory party around Brexit, and he did that. Now, you also know I've been incredibly critical of his handling of the pandemic and the fact that too often he has plunged us into these lockdowns. However, What's the alternative, Calvin?
This is the
and if we're looking at a Keir Starmer-led government, well, remember, Keir Starmer would have us locked down still even now.
Well, this is it. You know, I'm not a fence sitter, Dan, but I'm genuinely conflicted about this because I think he needs to go. I think he's done too much wrong, too much hypocrisy. He needs to go. But on the other hand, better the devil you know. And
what do we get?
Who would replace him? But also, who's out to get him? There's too many stories leaking all of a sudden. A year later, after all these parties.
Wait, who do you
who's
think? Can you
trying
say? Can you say who you think it is, or is that not allowed? Because I genuinely don't know who's out to get him.
It doesn't take a lot of working
Will
out.
you tell me
They
later?
might have a grudge.
Sorry,
against
Calvin, I sensed gossip and I got really excited. Tell me later.
But the crux of the matter is, these people had all of the data and they still threw parties. So it tells us they were not scared.
Yeah,
this is not as deadly as they made us believe.
Exactly. So the campaign of fear, look, we've spoken about it all through the night, and you know I'm very opposed to it. But Rebecca Reed, this isn't a resignation matter, right?
I can't tell you why. I really can't tell you why, but I'm still not cross. And here are the snagging things for me. I don't think, and this is somebody who couldn't go to a grandparent's funeral and who couldn't say goodbye to a grandparent, like a lot of people in this country.
Yeah, but that is
but
appalling thing.
As I'm saying, you know, I was also negatively impacted, like a lot of people. But those aren't the same thing. Being able to socialise outside with other people in their in good health is not the same as being allowed into a hospital. And during a pandemic, those aren't comparable. There is a very good reason that people had to give birth alone, and I say that as somebody who is the biggest feminist, certainly in this building right now.
I don't think there is any excuse for a woman giving birth alone.
Well,
I think that was
I think there is. If newborn babies can catch COVID from people who are in the area, the more people you bring in, the more likely you are people to catch
but a newborn
COVID.
baby with COVID is absolutely fine.
Really, some babies died of COVID. Not a bit. Like I'm not saying that I don't think COVID is as scary as everybody said it was at the beginning. But for a very newborn baby, it is a very big deal. For a very, very newborn.
We weren't. It's not even the hospital scenario. We weren't even allowed to meet with more than one person in the outdoors.
But I sort
it's nonsensical.
But I
agree,
sort of feel stupid. But I sort of feel stupid that we listened to that. Like, why was I saying?
Because
why was I not
get arrested
doing
if
that?
we didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's the point, because look, I will never follow anything like that again. I will never follow these controls on my behaviour again. But remember, we had Priti Patel literally threatening us all to be arrested. I mean, Boris Johnson had a press conference just a few days after this party, was asked a question by a member of the public, what do I do if I see folk gathering together in the park? And he said, oh, well, look, try and separate them. But if that doesn't work, call the police
Be a big
in a park.
They were criminalising people for sitting on park benches.
I think the only other thing, one of the other reasons that I'm struggling to get cross about this is that I remember reading and I remember studying and thinking it was interesting that Winston Churchill didn't turn his lights off during the blackout and he didn't have to do rationing, and they made sure he had Paul Roger champagne the whole way through. And there was this sense during the Second World War that Winston was in charge, therefore Winston was allowed to do what he wanted, and the people around him didn't have to follow the rules either. So I think maybe I just accepted on some level that it's always been that way, that people at the top don't follow the rules.
I understand what you're saying, but I think this was a very different scenario because they were enforcing unnecessary rules on us.
Exactly.
And to me, I actually completely understand. I get why these parties took place. I did not follow all the rules, and I attended little drinks gatherings with my workmates too over the course of the past year, and I have absolutely no guilt or shame about that, to be honest, because to me, and I will repeat it, what these parties show is that no one could follow these rules.
It was nonsensical.
They were nonsensical and they were inhumane.
Yes.
We are social beings. And to me, rather than using this as an opportunity to get rid of Boris Johnson, what I wish we were talking about in the mainstream media, I know we talk about it on this show, but what I wish the mainstream media was talking about is why lockdowns are ridiculous, why it is absolutely insane that ministers were getting up to that podium and telling us how to live our lives. No, never again. Never, ever again.
How many of us were really, because I definitely, certainly by that point, wasn't following it perfectly.
In May.
And most of my friends who work in the mainstream media also
The vast
weren't.
majority of people in May 2020 were still following the rules. And let me
Were we?
and let me tell you, Rebecca, in May 2020, I was still following the rules. Do I think I was an absolute mug for doing so? Yes. Do I wish I had ignored the rules? Do I wish I'd gone and hugged my friends who were suffering from depression, who needed comforting because they were grieving the loss of their family members? Yes, I wish I had, but I followed the rules.
But by May, you weren't going for a bottle of wine in the park.
Not in May. No, not in May.
I'm clearly more of a rebel than you were, because by May I was done.
That's fine, but people lost their livelihoods and people died alone. And at the end of the day, what I'm worried about right now is Boris Johnson the only one stopping us entering lockdown again? If we get rid of him, what do we get?
Well, exactly. And that's why I think we now have to draw a line under lockdowns, because not only did they not work, they weren't being followed by the leaders who were forcing them on us. Now, let's move on to something a little bit lighter. 90s TV favourite, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, one of my favourite shows actually, has been dragged into 2022, but in an oddly dark new reboot. So, like the original series, the new show, simply titled Bel-Air, follows a street-smart teenager from Philadelphia who's sent to live with his wealthy relatives in Los Angeles for a chance at a better future. So far, so familiar. But unlike the original series, which was very much a comedy, there's nothing to laugh about in this gritty new version, which looks at the dark backstory of the Fresh Prince.
Yo, Uncle Phil! I'm glad you're safe. We'll talk later.
Cousin Phil!
Yo! Is this really baby Ashley? You're a long way from home, Mom. Oh, Tim. How you been? You know, thriving. I hope one day we can talk about why you're really here. Do you know why I'm here from Philly?
Scrapping the bull court. Got nasty.
Who threw that? Was it you?
Now some bad man from Philly, he want to deal with you.
Oh, what a shame. Nothing to laugh about there, right? I mean, this is interesting because this is actually all created by Will Smith, and he's the bloke who obviously was the Fresh Prince. You've got to trust Will, I think. And it was inspired by a fan-made short film that sought the answer to the question, what would happen if Will Smith made the Fresh Prince today? But what I think about this is it just shows that we live in a darker world, in a world where we can't just have a bit of fun and laugh, and everything has to be about deep, dark political issues. And to be honest, I'm not going to be watching this because I'm not going to be laughing at it, and that's what the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was all about. Now, my superstar panel, thank you, Dawn Neeson, Calvin Robinson, Rebecca Reed, do stand by. Because coming up, we're going to tackle this one, and believe me, it's the issue of the day for me. How do we save our sauce sachets from ketchup fascist George Eustace? My panel will be debating that and other issues of national importance in the Media Buzz Plus. More of tomorrow's newspaper front pages too. But next, hysterical scientists got the Omicron scariant dead wrong. So isn't it time we held the likes of Professor Neil Ferguson to account for snatching away our civil liberties? Well, Tory MP Bob Seeley has been calling for an emergency debate on the matter. He'll sit down with me straight after the break.
Hello again. Clearing skies across much of England and Wales overnight will lead to frost and fog, especially in the south. Cloudier and breezier in the north, so frost-free here, but some rain in the far north because of these weather fronts. And also tightly packed isobars across much of Scotland will lead to a breezy night on the periphery of this high pressure. But the high is pushing these weather fronts out of the way. Those weather fronts have brought a generally dull and damp day across southern parts of England and Wales through the day, but they clear by midnight, and then clearing skies across a large part of England and Wales. So plummeting temperatures, a widespread frost, and in some places some dense fog patches to begin things on Wednesday morning. Possibility of disruption on the roads first thing because of those fog patches. They won't affect everywhere, but they will be dense where they occur. Further north, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, a bit more cloud in the sky, so frost and fog free first thing here. Thick cloud for the north and northwest of Scotland, some outbreaks of rain and a strong wind, nearing gale force in exposed parts of the far north. Mild here, 10 or 11 Celsius, whilst further south, sunny skies, but temperatures closer to average. Feeling pleasant enough with light winds, however. Then we do it all again on Wednesday night. Clear skies across the southern half of the UK, temperatures fall away, frost and fog form, and once again some dense fog patches about first thing Thursday. But for Northern England, for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, a milder start here because of the cloud and the breeze. And it's going to be remaining damp for the Northwest Highlands, for the Northern and Western Isles at times, generally during the next few days. I think in places the fog will linger into the afternoon across parts of England and Wales. Away from those, plenty of sunshine once more, central, southern and eastern parts of the country, but feeling a bit colder, and those temperatures drop away later this week into the weekend, and we'll increasingly see more widespread and longer lasting fog.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Now, as I said in my digest, the past 2 days, it's an inconvenient truth for the doomsday scientists and lockdown fanatics that Omicron is turning out to be a pussycat. And why did we expect it to be so horrific? Because of the junk modelling by fear-mongering scientists such as Bonkin, Boff and Neil Ferguson, who just a month ago said that without further restrictions, there could be in the region of 3,000 daily Omicron cases at the peak in January. What absolute tripe. Here we are on January the 11th. The latest 7-day average of deaths is 237.1 compared to 1,072.4 this time last year. Modellers have faced growing criticism for drastically wrong predictions, and one politician who's been leading the charge is Tory MP Bob Seeley. He's demanded an urgent debate on the issue and had this to say in the House about Ferguson's dodgy data.
Professor Ferguson, in 2001, he predicted 150,000 human deaths from foot and mouth. Under 200 died. In 2002, between 50 and 50,000 deaths from BSE. In the end, 177 died. In 2005, 150 million people could be killed from bird flu. 282 died. In 2009, government estimate, based on his advice, a reasonable worst-case scenario for swine flu would lead to 65,000 British deaths. In the end, 457 people died.
So, Bob Seeley, there's the rap sheet. Why is it that even though Ferguson has got it wrong every step of the way throughout the COVID-19 pandemic too, and he's actually been sacked once for breaking the lockdown rules to have a bit of a fling with some woman, why is it that we keep listening to him, even now?
It's a really well. Firstly, good evening, Diana. Good evening to your viewers. It's a really difficult question. I think politicians don't want to take on scientists because nasty politicians versus lovely scientists. Actually, we have a duty to question the evidence. Scientists have a duty to question the evidence. And I didn't get my emergency debate, but we have a Westminster Hall debate next Tuesday. And I don't need to be attacking Ferguson myself or Imperial because there are now so many scientists who are doing it for us. And I tell you, Dan, It started 20 years ago. Foot and mouth. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Appalling suffering. Thousands of animals slaughtered. Quite a few farmers committed suicide. Vast costs of money. Hysterical action. There were 2 peer-reviewed reports, so academic, credible reports, that came out in 2006 and 2011. And I've got the quotes from them on a screen in front of me. Ferguson's work led the modelling. And afterwards, these 7 academics who wrote these 2 reports said that the data was severely flawed, it was based on dissimilar academics, it used inaccurate background information, at best the maths was crude estimations, at worst it was inaccurate representations, the models were not fit for purpose. Effectively, it gave way to a scientific opportunists. Ferguson, I'm afraid, and Imperial and others were absolutely slated. You roll on 20 years, and exactly the same thing is now beginning to happen all over again.
Well,
We've got
indeed.
modelers who come out with historical forecasts.
Yeah, and Bob, I think it's a disgrace, by the way, that you didn't get your emergency debate, because what it tells me is that the political establishment isn't taking this issue seriously. And to me, it's actually the most important news story at the moment. It's actually far more important than whatever was going on at number 10 Downing Street last May, because these models influenced whether the government plunged us into lockdown or not. And we know how damaging lockdown has been. And when it comes to Omicron, remember, all of these folk wanted us to be in lockdown now. And what I don't understand, Bob, and maybe you can try and explain it to me, but we had real-world evidence. We had data from South Africa. I had the South African doctor who discovered Omicron on this show, and she said, don't panic. But why did our models not take that into account?
I think, simply put, it's not just the modelers and the forecasters, it's also chunks of the media, especially the sort of propaganda arm for the lockdown state, not GBNews, not The Spectator, bless it, not The Telegraph, not The Daily Mail, and not the many scientists who are writing for those publications. In the army, there's something called the most dangerous course of action and the most likely course of action. And I think what the modelers and the forecasters, the academics, some of the media, and sadly the government have done is they've taken what the military call the most dangerous course of action. And because it's on a piece of paper in front of them, and you have a very risk-averse establishment, for understandable reasons, what we have is the most dangerous course of action has become, in people's minds, the decision-makers' minds, the most likely course of action. So even now, when Omicron was very likely not that serious, in fact, it could be a blessing in disguise, because it could help to give us a community immunity. I know people don't like herd immunity.
A natural vaccine, you might say, Bob.
Yeah. People, even when Omicron was beginning to happen, were saying, oh, it's really scary. And I had the same briefings that you had, and from my local public health saying, well, we can't take anything for granted. And I'm saying, hold on. You can't just lock people down on a whim anymore. We've got to stop doing it. And the really interesting thing, Dan, as soon as this information has become verifiable, it is shot away the forecasters and the modelers, not only Imperial and the London Tropical Medicine School, who came out with this ridiculous worst case scenario of 6,000 deaths a day, best case or happy case is 3,000, and you say, well, on sort of 250 is a rolling average. But not only that, but Ferguson and Imperial also provided a model that the Swedish then used and said was, quotes, almost hysterical. And Ferguson last summer and Imperial last summer, I'm afraid, claimed, well, Ferguson certainly did, 100,000 cases after the football, when in fact it peaked at about 39,000. And he said a minimum of 100,000 cases. So whenever this modelling has become verifiable, it has simply fallen to pieces. And for me, you're right, this is a national scandal. Because we have spent, 380 billion? Just think of the good that we could have done with that money. We've spent vast sums of money, and as your fascinating and excellent guests have shown, so much of what's happened since with the lockdown and with the sort of very inhuman conditions that many of us struggled, including myself, sadly, many of us struggled with, actually were built on some really questionable science. Can I just make one other brief point, which you will love? The original 500,000 dead if we don't do anything. Imperial peer-reviewed that, and they said that actually we've saved 3 million lives by that. And even that now is falling apart. So Imperial was marking their own homework, but now the peer-reviewed papers are again coming out and again questioning it. So this is what I want to build on next week. It's a national scandal for me. It really is.
I think you're right. I agree. This is a national scandal. Bob Seeley, please keep putting a spotlight on it, as will I, because we cannot let this happen again. And that's what this is about. We cannot let these modelers plunge us into a lockdown again. Thank you so much.
No.
Of course, we get both sides of the story here on GB News. So in response to criticism of the forecast, Britain's chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, said the modelers always have to make assumptions and do so across a wide range of possibilities, some optimistic and some pessimistic. They do not, contrary to what you may have heard, only model the worst outcomes. And a spokesperson from Imperial College London told GB News this evening, a model with many scenarios, some counterfactual, does not mean the most extreme scenario is a prediction, as is clear in Professor Ferguson's work. It would be misleading to characterise these claims as predictions or forecasts. Coming up, do you remember when the BBC gave a damn about patriotism? What changed? I'll take a look at this campaign for the British Bashing Corporation to bring back daily renditions of the national anthem. Do you know what? Let's replace the daily COVID numbers, BBC News, and bring back the national anthem. It would make us all a lot happier. But next in the Media Buzz, is it inappropriate to turn up to a wedding like this? Yes, I say, but not if you're a Kardashian. Apparently, my panel will give their verdict and take a look at more front pages straight after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. And more front pages have just been delivered. Apologies to anyone watching at number 10. Boris, these ain't good for you, mate. Johnson is losing Tory support. Now, that's his old newspaper, the Daily Telegraph. It's the one he cares about most. And it reports prominent Conservatives said it was appalling and utterly indefensible that the alleged garden party took place. Douglas Ross, the Scottish Tory leader, said Mr Johnson should quit if he had broken the rules or misled Parliament, as we saw in the news earlier tonight. The Daily Mail, another paper largely supportive of Boris Johnson lately, asks, is the party over Boris? And has some advice for the embattled PM. Britain is fizzing with anger. Boris must apologise and show humility. Only then can he survive. Will we get that at PMQs tomorrow? Time will tell. The Daily Mirror takes it upon itself to answer the question the Mail asks. The party's over Boris, they declare. Well, we'll see. The publication brands the PM a serial liar in what I'm sure they think is a damning front page. Number 10 staff told to clean up their phones before probe. That's the lead on The Independent. The paper reports that Downing Street staff members were advised to remove data that could suggest lockdown parties were held at number 10. This comes as Boris faces fury from both the public and MPs over these revelations, of course. The Guardian also leads with that Tory MP anger. They say they're urging the PM to come clean over the party allegations. And the newspaper reports that Boris Johnson is facing intense pressure from senior Tories to publicly confess and apologise for the alleged party. The Eye reports the Prime Minister must resign if he attended a lockdown drinks party in the Downing Street garden. That's according to a senior Conservative. They say Tory MPs, activists and donors criticise Boris's alleged rule-breaking, and multiple backbenchers have told the paper they believe the latest party scandal had weakened the PM's authority and made a challenge to his leadership more likely. Now here's the number one cheerleading newspaper for Boris, the Daily Express, and they say, winning war on COVID, fixed Brexit, don't blow it now, PM. Boris will tomorrow try and calm the Partygate storm, which is dominating the political agenda. Despite the intense pressure he is under, the newspaper reports that Johnson is still enjoying strong support in his party after successfully delivering on some of those matters. And the Daily Star, riffing on the classic political comedy Yes, Minister, has a direct question for the PM. Were you at the party, yes or no? It's a really interesting one, this pressure on Boris Johnson from senior Tories to admit it, to come out, to apologise, say he got it wrong. Because the problem is that will probably then only embolden his critics who say, well, you broke the rules, you've admitted it, you must now go. So I can imagine there's going to be a real debate in number 10 Downing Street over what the best strategy is. And it may only be decided, of course, just before Boris goes head-to-head in PMQs tomorrow with, we believe, Keir Starmer. Is he entering, his 500th day of self-isolation now, or is he finally out into the real world? Let me bring in my superstar panel. They hired away from nothing. It's the former editor at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator, Calvin Robinson, and the Earth author and journalist, Rebecca Reid. But look, I want to move on to the story that has wound me up. Has found a new feckless frontier. Our takeaway sauce sachets. Fascist is hoping to add those handy little packets, mini milk containers and throwaway cutlery to the banned list of simple pleasures, with businesses told to find green alternatives. I say, can't they just leave us alone? Leave our condiments alone. Because actually, think about this. How are you meant to transport sauce, ketchup, if it's not in a sachet, in a beautiful sachet? I love these things, by the way. I absolutely love little ketchup sachets. They also want to come, these beautiful little milk containers too. And government sources claim that it's a deep concern and that we must save marine life. But that is garbage, remember, because remember, they are mandating those wretched plastic masks, 1.6 billion of which ended up in the ocean last year. It's clear that all green and COVID regulations are born out of the same hypocritical obsession with controlling us to within an inch of our lives. But let's be honest, none of them actually solve anything, do they? It's pure COVID theatre. Now, in a statement, the government department said a consultation is still open and no decision has been made, but added sachets are particularly problematic because they are small and hard to recycle. We launched the call for evidence to give us a better understanding of what a move to sustainable alternatives might look like without unfairly impacting on consumers. But come on, look, Dawn, I've gone for it. Can you see this? I've gone for it. I've made this tonight. Save our sachets. Because I'm just sick, Dawn, of, I had plastic straws taken away from me. Now they want to take away my ketchup sachets. Can they not just let us live?
Have you thought about therapy?
It's actually a very good idea, Dawn. You're not the first person to
it probably is. Look, I understand as someone who's as addicted to takeaways and KFC and other takeaways are available as you are, that you're going to get your Nixon and twist over this one, Dan.
Yeah.
And there is, you know, the government favourite hypocrisy about this, isn't it? As you point out, 1.6 billion masks are floating around in our ocean.
What about all those actual flow tests? They're all little plastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plastic.
And you remember when we first came out of the first lockdown, just after all the parties, obviously in number 10, we had sachets taken away from us. No, we had sachets introduced to us because they took away the containers.
I know, and it was meant to be more hygienic.
It was more hygienic because you couldn't all touch the same tomato sauce bottle because, you know, you'd die of COVID next week or something or other. So they brought these sachets back in.
And Calvin Robinson, I mean, this is a serious issue, though.
It is. No, it really
actually is because I feel like everything convenient.
Don't look at me like that. Don't look at me like that, Dawn.
You don't think
I'm with Cal on this one. I'll tell you why.
There is no way the USA would say you can't have a plastic straw, you can't have a plastic cup, you can't have a beautiful little sachet of sauce.
Like,
It's not beautiful.
Dan's over-egging it a bit, but it's the principle of the matter that counts. Because ban, tax and spend is all this government seems to want to do. And they've tried this. You cannot regulate change. They tried this with the blooming straws. They took away our straws. We can no longer drink McDonald's milkshakes because we want to save the turtles. And all that happened is manufacturers put more plastic into the lids than they did, so they don't need a straw anymore. Places like Starbucks,
Rebecca,
more plastic is being used. It does not work.
You must be with me on this, Rebecca.
I'm so super not with you, Dan. I think to start with...
So you go to the kebab store, right? And you get a little takeaway kebab.
I would never go to a kebab store.
Oh, well, what a snob.
No, I don't like
You'd
kebabs.
never go to a kebab store. Are you British?
I'm usually asleep by 11 o'clock, and I'm not that fun anymore.
So what do lefties do? You'll go to your local little quinoa and hummus store.
When I go to the quinoa and hummus store.
And you want some ketchup.
And I want my hummus. They will put my hummus in a biodegradable pouch which has been blessed by a vegan. No,
it will tip all
I'm
over
obviously
you.
laughing. No. Okay, two things. First of all, please can we get a grip on the word fascist, because that actually really means something and is a big deal. And when we use it for silly things, we devalue it.
This isn't silly to me.
Okay.
You think I'm joking? I'm not.
No, I respect our difference of belief. Secondarily, I think all that's being suggested is if you can make one of those predominantly out of a recyclable material, that would be better.
Oh, yeah, like the McDonald's straws, which actually turned out to be worse for the environment once they became
Just because it hasn't been done perfectly before doesn't mean it couldn't be done better again.
But legislation doesn't work in this way.
It doesn't. Just let us be free. Let the market decide. This is a nonsense.
I am also very libertarian, and I agree that making people do it is a bad idea, but encouraging people would be a nice idea.
Now, look, remind me, what is it you need for a wedding again? So I think it goes something old, something new, something borrowed, and maybe these days, something rude. Because this is the outrageous outfit that supermodel and reality star Kendall Jenner wore to a pal's wedding over the New Year period, leaving more than just the bride blushing. The pics have now gone viral, with gobsmacked folk branding the designer garb inappropriate and disrespectful. One online commentator described Kendall as having no class or consideration for others, while another said they would have chucked her out. Now, Calvin Robinson, in all seriousness, you don't want, if you're a bride, you don't want your best mate turning up in that sort of outfit because it is going to completely overshadow you. And I think this Kardashian woman was completely disrespectful.
She's a Jenner. She's a Jenner.
Well, she's part of the
She's a Jenner, not a Kardashian. Let's get it.
Kardashian, Jenner, they're all the same family, isn't it? I actually respect them because they're really good business people.
They are.
But at the same time, I think whoever's wedding this was, they probably got a lot more press and a lot more media attention to their wedding than they had
But a conspiracy theory, but definitely not a conspiracy theory. The devil works hard, Kris Jenner works harder. This was just after the Astroworld catastrophe. This was a distraction about the fact that Kylie's baby daddy ran a festival where people died.
Wow.
I'm telling you.
What?
Wow.
I'm telling you guys. As Kardashian correspondent with a K.
Okay, no, I get what
I'm
you're saying.
telling you.
But Dawn needs some... So this Kendall says she asked the bride, and the bride said it's completely fine. But what's the bride going to say? I mean, it's about respect. You don't put the bride in that position, do you?
My wedding dress was quite similar, to be honest with you.
More power to you.
Well, you're a saucy lady, but the point is that's your wedding dress. You wouldn't go to someone else's wedding dressed in nothing.
Well, look, I mean, this is all about publicity, isn't it? I mean, it's worked. We're talking about it, and I'm sure they were all in on the act.
But come on, look, do you know, if you look at that picture, by the way, that is the bride in the middle of the picture. No one is looking at the bride. And it is the bride's wedding.
Kendall's the main character in this story.
I know, exactly, but she had a responsibility to not show up her good mate,
Kendall Jenner
the bride.
cannot look bad. Whatever she wore, she would be Kendall
Then she
Jenner.
could have wore something
She
softer.
looks amazing. There's nothing you can put on that woman's body that doesn't look amazing.
Well, no, and yeah, Rebecca, that is true. That is true. Rebecca Reid, Calvin Robinson, Dawn Neeson, thank you so much. Because, stand by though, because coming up, the crowning moment of the show as I coronate today's Gracious Britain Union Jack, as the panel will nominate. But next, why can't the BBC even be proud about our damn national anthem anymore? Tory MP Andrew Rosendale, who's pushing for the return of daily broadcasts of God Save the Queen, is here on Uncancelled, right after we take a very quick look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight. Is Gen Z too sensitive, and could their obsession with feelings be making them miserable? Star Daily Telegraph columnist and author Celia Walden has been investigating. As the Queen enters her Jubilee year, Robert Jobson gives platinum-grade analysis of the latest royal scandals and crown jewels. Plus, unfiltered favourite Rod Liddell delivers a unique take on issues that matter to you. And I break down the stories of the day with my superstar panel. The Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platel, radio royalty Neil Fox, and political commentator Daisy McAndrew. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, who remembers the days when the biased BBC stood for something other than the Britain-bashing corporation? You know, the B was once proud of our great country, a true beacon of patriotism beamed into the nation's homes, proven by the way they ended daily broadcasts before they turned against the country are supposed to serve.
You a very good night. Good night.
Oh, I love it. Now, one Tory MP, Andrew Rosendale, made an inspired plea last week for this daily rendition of God Save the Queen to return in honour of Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee.
Singing of the national anthem is something that provides great sense of unity and pride in our nation. And so in this year of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, will the Minister take steps to encourage public broadcasters to play the national anthem and ensure that the BBC restore it at the end of the day's programming before it switches to News 24?
Absolutely brilliant idea, and I'm delighted to say that Andrew is joining me now. But of course, Andrew, we know that the BBC won't want to do this, and the government, probably quite rightly, because there has to be a separation between the media and the state, but the government can't force them to do so, and they say, no, not interested.
Look, the BBC is meant to be the British Broadcasting Corporation, Dan, and this is the year of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. I frankly am sick of all this woke stuff. Yeah, I want this country to be proud of our heritage, our traditions, our monarchy, our flag. I'm fed up with all of it. I want these things restored so our young people have a sense of pride and belief in our country once again. And if the BBC can't put the national anthem back on for 30 seconds at the end of the day's programming, then they can't really call themselves the British Broadcasting Corporation anymore. It's time to get this back on track, and I think that this is the year to do it for the Queen's Jubilee.
No, I completely agree. But the sad thing about the BBC, because they never used to be like this, Andrew, but the sad thing about them is, you know, they snare at patriotism. Do you remember that interview with Robert Jenrick, who had a beautiful big Union Jack behind him? And the two presenters on BBC Breakfast snared at him. They literally laughed at him. And I think that shows you the headspace that virtually everyone who works at the corporation is in. They're embarrassed about Britain now.
But, you know, Dan, it's quite shocking because it's also dangerous because it's unpicking the unity that brings British people together. Look, we're all from different backgrounds, different religions, different ethnic backgrounds, different political views. We have differences. But the one thing that unites all of us is, I hope, the love of this country.
Absolutely.
And so we need these national symbols to bring us together. And singing the national anthem and hearing the national anthem is something that I hope all young people should appreciate. And I remember hearing it on the BBC when I was a teenager, and I thought, oh, that's a national anthem. And it made me feel a sense of belonging to this country. But unfortunately, there are people today who actually want to divide us and divide us in all kinds of ways. But the one thing that should never be allowed to happen is to break up the British identity by bringing in different types of identities. And this is the year, the 70th year of this magnificent head of state we have, the Queen. I mean, no country in the world has got a head of state that served as long as Her Majesty, and we should celebrate it. And the BBC should dump the wokeness, dump the PC nonsense. Let's have our anthem back again on BBC One.
I completely agree. And the thing is, it's such a small gesture, but it would show a change in psychology within the corporation.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think it's so sad that they just dismiss it. They should be listening to folk like you and thinking, actually, why not play the anthem at the end of the day? Because BBC One effectively does shut down and then they move and play the BBC News channel. So there is a moment where they could do it.
Absolutely. Look, they've hidden behind this for years. I raised it 20 years ago when I first became an MP in 2001. And the BBC claim that it's because BBC One goes to 24-hour programming. Well, actually, it doesn't. BBC One shuts down and it switches to News 24. So that's the point, that they could do it. And do you know something? God save the Queen and the heritage of this country isn't just about Britain. It's the Commonwealth too. And this country has, and I'm really proud of this, lots of people who have Commonwealth ancestry. I think you might be one of them, Dan, from New Zealand. So I think that everyone respects the Queen. Everyone understands that we're so privileged to have not a president or a prime minister that actually is the sovereign, but someone who has served this country for 70 years. And surely, if there's a year to do it, it's 2022 to restore the national anthem. And by the way, let's sing it in schools as well. Why don't pupils in assembly, at least once a week, sing the national anthem?
Well, I would say every morning, actually. I would say every morning in schools, and then the BBC should play it every night. They won't, but I love this campaign, so thank you for raising it. The Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosendale, a BBC spokesperson, said in response to Andrew's idea, the national anthem is played every night on Radio 4 after the late shipping forecast, and we continue to play it at appropriate times on television, such as during the Queen's Christmas broadcast. We no longer play the national anthem on a daily basis on BBC One because it doesn't close down in the evening. So there you go. They're not listening. They really do hate Britain, and it is such a shame that this is where the BBC is at today. Time now to reveal today's greatest Britain in Union jackass. My superstar panel back with me. So, Dawn Neeson, let me kick off with you. Who is your nomination for Greatest Britain this evening?
Greatest Britain is for everyone that abided by those nonsensical COVID lockdown rules in May 2020, those separated from their loved ones, children not in school, those suffering at home from domestic violence and children being abused, everyone that really suffered, couples cancelling their weddings, all of those people that stuck by the rules while our leaders were having cheese and wine parties in Buckingham.
Very good nomination, very relevant today. Calvin Robinson, yours.
My Greatest Britain. I wish I'd have nominated Mr. Rosendale, actually, after that uniting, very sound interview. But I've chosen Dr. Malone for his interview with your good self yesterday.
Robert Malone, yes, he was on the show yesterday, and it's on YouTube, so you can watch that interview in full. It hasn't been taken down yet. Rebecca Reid, your nomination.
I'm gone for Morrison's, the supermarket, because they're trying to get rid of sell-by dates, particularly on milk. Because sell-by dates are largely pointless, and as an adult, you should be able to make a judgment about whether food is good or not, and it might help reduce food waste, which is a big problem in this country.
OK. Well, my winner is Calvin tonight, because I think I've had a huge, overwhelming reaction to my interview with Dr. Robert Malone. And all I say is that we should be able to openly debate issues like the COVID vaccine and the other broadcasters are too scared to do it. Union Jackass time now. Dawn Neeson, your nominee.
Right, OK. I'm going for George Eustace and the sauce sachet banned takeaway shop.
Yes. Rebecca Reed's going to be horrified.
Under duress, but
I
only...
think Dawn's horrified.
I'm fairly horrified, but only because it's a small part of this Boris being prisoner to the woke mob and the ridiculous green levies we all have on our few bills.
Calvin Robinson, very quickly, your nomination.
Albert Bourla, the chairman and CEO of Pfizer, for initially implying that the jab is 100% effective a year ago today. And then today he comes out and says actually 2 jabs offer very little protection. He's a salesman, not a hero.
Rebecca Reed, your Union Jackass nominee.
I've gone Australian government because, and you know that I am very pro-vaccine, but they have made it, they're having a 4-day lockdown during which your right to have 1 hour of outside exercise is removed if you're not vaccinated. So you literally cannot even go for a walk.
Disgusting.
And, like, I've been pretty chill about this stuff, but that's too far.
No, it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. All good choices, but of course, it's the sachet fascists. They are my Union Jackass. George Eustace, do not take away our little plastic sachets. It's one of those things in life that just make things easier. It's a fabulous superstar panel tonight. Dawn Neeson, Calvin Robinson, Rebecca Reed, thank you so much. Thank you for your company too. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Remember, Headliners is up now. Good night.
Hello again. Clearing skies across much of England and Wales overnight will lead to frost and fog, especially in the south. Cloudier and breezier in the north, so frost-free here, but some rain in the far north because of these weather fronts. And also tightly packed isobars across much of Scotland will lead to a breezy night on the periphery of this high pressure. But the high is pushing these weather fronts out of the way. Those weather fronts have brought a generally dull and damp day across southern parts of England and Wales through the day, but they clear by midnight and then clear